Episode 425, my backstory and my big AI ambitions.
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful.
AI is a golden opportunity.
How do we ensure that this technology is regulated?
The long arc of technological history is now in an extraordinary new phase.
The AI 6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Well, it was quite a 24 hours last weekend. Last Friday night, I won Established Businesswoman of the Year 2026 at the Network Ireland Galway Branch Awards. 12 hours later, I was sitting in studio with Richard Curran, host of The Business Show on RTÉ Radio 1. He wanted to talk to me about life, business and artificial intelligence. In this conversation, you will hear about my humble and challenging beginnings and how I feel I'm now well placed to lead in artificial intelligence. RTÉ titled the interview, Single Motherhood and Business Success. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, our next guest is a Donegal woman who has overcome lots of adversity to get to where she is today. Joanne Sweeney runs the Digital Training Institute and she's had a very varied and interesting career along the way, and she joins me now. You're very welcome to the programme, Joanne. We'll talk a bit about digital training and AI in a moment, but quite a long way from that world of AI, you started off on the family farm in Donegal, in Downings.
That's right, yes. I come from a family of 7 siblings. There's 8 of us, and my dad still farms the farm, actually in Glen in County Donegal, not too far from Downings. My mother was raising us, probably the hardest job in the world, right? Raising children. And so hard work, I guess, was just in our blood. And when you come from the west of Ireland, opportunity can be not huge growing up in the 80s, but you learn a great work ethic.
What kind of things did you get roped into doing on the farm?
Well, I am very proud to say that I have sheared sheep, I've dipped sheep, and I've been to plenty marts in my time, and great skills. I don't know if they still stand to me today, but I think definitely the work ethic has stood to me.
So you're able to heckle and bargain as well.
Oh, I am, yeah.
And a big family, so was it sort of at times tough in terms of demanding around school and schoolwork and jobs that had to be done?
It was a very busy house. I mean, we grew up in a council house in Downings with 8 siblings and 2 parents, so you can appreciate there wasn't a lot of room, but a busy house, a beautiful, chaotic house, I would say. Everybody jockeying for their own position, but everybody looking out for each other. And so it was a lovely time of green fields and coastal adventure, and then getting to the farm at the weekend. And yeah, it was great.
You were big into school. You really liked school.
Yeah, I was very unusual. I used to do my homework 4 times. When I'd start a new class, I'd go to the back of the English book and see if I could read it. I absolutely loved school, and I guess that is a thread in my story that remains today, that love of knowledge and education.
And you were in secondary school, you were 16 when you became pregnant, Joanne. Very, very tough time at that age, and your daughter was born at 17. A real shock.
Huge shock. I mean, I remember getting the bus at Downings at Jack's Corner at 7:30 in the morning and taking faint. And that was the last day that I went to school. I didn't know what was wrong, but I discovered that I was pregnant at 16 with Sophie's dad, Henry, and I gave birth at 17. But before I gave birth, I went back to my principal, Cathal Green, which was then the Tech in Mulford, now Mulroy Vocational School. And I said, "Sir, I'm going to have this baby after the midterm break. I'm guessing that by 6 weeks old, she'll be sleeping all night. My mother has agreed to watch the baby. I want to come back to school." So I was very single-minded and intentional that I was going to not only have this baby, raise this baby, but go back to school.
And it must have taken you some time to gather your thoughts and come up with that and decide this is how I'm going to deal with it, because you must have been frightened about the future.
I was absolutely terrified, and as you will appreciate, this was the mid-90s, Richard, and it was a very different time of Ireland, and people had lots of opinions, but I wanted to commit to myself that I could give myself a good life. And the baby, I had no answers. I had no roadmap. All I had was an intention and a belief that I could do it.
And what about breaking the news to your folks?
Well, let me tell you, this is a funny story, and my mum's probably listening, and she won't mind me saying this, I hope.
You'll find out after.
I'll find out afterwards, but she found out from an elderly neighbour. An elderly neighbour said, and Joanne is pregnant. And Mum recounts the story, saying she held on to the fence and said, yeah, that's right. And she came into the house, into my box bedroom, knocked on the door and said, are you pregnant? And I said, I am. And she said, okay. She goes, I thought you were depressed because you weren't coming out of your room and you weren't going to school, and I knew how much you love school. So I didn't tell anyone for a long time. I had no prenatal care, no scans, and in actual fact gave birth and did it all the wrong way and had an asthma attack during the labour. But, you know, Sophie and I survived to tell the tale.
And that determination around school, and you talked about how you spoke to the principal and you had a plan. Nothing was going to derail you from that. That's the impression that I get. And you went back to school very quickly. Yeah,
I went back to school at 6 when Sophie was 6 weeks old. My mum minded her, and interestingly, I kept up my job in the local hotel in the Rosapenna. So I'd get off the school bus at 4:30, go and wash dishes from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. because my mother was a single parent also with 2 young girls. My sisters were 10 years younger than me, and so I had to contribute to that household. And so I was making bottles, studying Shakespeare and going to school.
And Sophie was only a few months old when tragedy struck for her dad. What happened there?
So it was a February night. I was training with the local Gaelic team on the beach in Downings, as we did in the winter, because we're tough up there. And we went out and I met Sophie's dad, Henry. And it was the end of the night. I went to get my coat at the cloakroom. And I went out. Henry was in the car with 2 young guys. And I says, hey, what's going on? Who are these? And he says, Joanne, they've missed their bus. I'm going to give them a lift home. And he said, get in. And I says, sure, I'll wait. You'll only be 10 minutes. And unfortunately, that night on the 25th of February, 30 years ago, the 3 young men were killed that night.
Devastating.
Absolutely devastating. They didn't come back. I waited for hours, Richard, and he didn't come back. And my mother broke that news to me then the next morning.
So there had been a car crash and just in a single moment.
Single vehicle accident, yeah. They slipped on black ice, and unfortunately that was the end for them, and it was not my time.
And Sophie was only a few months old?
She was 5 months old, and so you will appreciate the weight of responsibility on my shoulders at that stage was even greater. And I was only 18. I did not know my next move, but I went back to school a week later, and what I would say is, again, school became a haven for me.
And you studied hard. You did a great leaving cert. You went to University of Galway. Sophie's still very young. You wanted to go to University of Galway. How did you make all that work?
I went to a phone box in Letterkenny after I got my results, and I started making phone calls to the university and the Students' Union and to social welfare and say, what am I entitled to? And remarkably, I was underage for 3rd level allowance. I was 19 going to university, and the advice was stay out of education for 4 years and then you'll qualify. And I said, I'm not doing that. I will save the state £8,500 if I go now. And I went, and let me tell you, the university wrapped me up in cotton wool. They gave me all the best jobs in the college, in Smokies, in the cloakroom, and I worked in local bars, and my friends who I shared a house with minded Sophie.
Yeah, you brought Sophie with you.
She came with me.
And the challenges that any student faces in accommodation and the new challenges of university, and you had this young baby Sophie with you. How did you manage with what kind of place were you staying in, or?
I had wonderful years living and renting in Salt Hill. My friend Sinead, we shared a double bed. Sophie was on a mattress on the floor, and 3 other guys from Donegal also went to university, and we helped each other out. I had to spend all of my single parents' allowance, which was £65, to put her into creche. So then to fund living, I had to have jobs.
That was brilliant, the way everybody helped along to get you through.
Takes a village, Richard.
And you wanted to be a journalist.
Yes.
Why journalism?
Well, let me tell you,
says he with disbelief.
My earliest memories is my father tying my brown leather shoelaces in the kitchen, listening to David Hanley on Morning Ireland, and it is still my wake-up call. And so I was brought up in a house of news and of current affairs and of world events, and I loved to write. And I discovered what could I put together, my love of writing for my love of news, and I decided journalism.
And you went to work with Highland Radio, and you were a journalist there. You covered a lot of stories, Bloody Sunday, Tribunal, various things like that. And where did the digital side of things come in, and digital marketing? Was that so? And you set up your own business as well. Yeah,
well, I've only ever had 4 jobs in my life. And so I set up my first company in 2007, just as the crash was happening, and people in Lehman Brothers over in New York were being let go. And so the timing was terrible. But I realised that being an entrepreneur was maybe something that I could do, because communications was my skill set. And I'd been CEO in a media company in Letterkenny for a year. My timing was terrible, but again, my ambition was well placed. And so I began to see my industry change from traditional to digital. And I'd always made a commitment that ever since I graduated from the University of Galway with journalism, that I'd never be left behind. I'd always be at the cutting edge. And I think that has stood to me.
And not everybody's cut out to set up their own business. There's a whole other set of skills around that. And inevitably, digital marketing was a growth area. It was taking off at that time. You were sort of catching that wave, even if it was a tough time business-wise. But after that, then, you were looking at the next wave as well with AI. And you set up the Digital Training Institute.
Yeah, and again, I'm always a forecaster, and I guess it's the journalist in me seeing what's ahead and what's happening in other continents. And I think everybody will remember where they were when we saw Sam Altman stand on stage in San Francisco in November 2022 and introduce ChatGPT to the world. And as somebody who is a knowledge worker and shares expertise and professional services, I kind of realised that that was going to disrupt my business, and I had to move once again. And so I committed to studying academically, professionally, writing a book on AI and going to Harvard last summer and testing my knowledge in order then to bring my client base with me. But not only that, what I've discovered in the last number of years is not only can I be an educator or an advisor, but I can build with AI, and that's where the exciting future lives.
What was Harvard like?
Well, for somebody who loved going to school, to take up my seat at Harvard with 73 other professionals when hundreds apply from around the world, that was a moment that I'll never forget. I loved it.
Very satisfying to be surrounded by the mature trees and the buildings and all this great learned place.
It was a dream that I didn't dream of, but a door that opened that I'm very grateful for. And I met amazing people, but I've also been able to take that knowledge back.
What about AI, Joanne, in terms of jobs? Digital marketing is one area where AI can deliver huge efficiency, huge change, in a lot of ways for businesses that are very positive. But what does it mean for employees? Fewer people.
Well, I mean, we've got many studies coming out from the likes of the ESRI or the IMF are saying that knowledge workers and white collar workers are going to be impacted by job displacement, or at least augmenting their roles. We've got to get on this wave. It's here to stay. But what I would say to people is that combine your domain expertise with this technology and your career is going to soar. The humanity, the critical thinking, the creativity, the judgment, the nuance that a human brings is what we need, but we can all take advantage. And for entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs out there, what I would say is that the duration from ideation to minimal viable product to profitability, previously that would have taken years. This could now take months. There's an opportunity for everybody here.
Is there an opportunity for everybody? Because one of the things is that if fewer employees are needed in certain areas doing certain sectors and certain types of skills, the ones, I've heard it said that the ones who can train themselves up in AI are the ones that will be most required and hold on to their jobs. And if you miss that boat, you could lose out. That's what we keep hearing. And in that sense, then, there are opportunities there for people who do that, but that isn't necessarily for everybody.
It's not, although our government has a national strategy and their commitment is to train, all public servants and people in artificial intelligence. And I asked on my podcast a TD what's going to happen about job displacement, and he says we will reorganise our workforce so that people are not displaced. But Richard, new careers are going to evolve, and AI is going to come up with some of the solutions to some of the world's biggest problems. So I think we can survive if we are intentional and we open our minds to it.
We've talked quite a bit about your daughter, Sophie. How is she? What age is she now?
Sophie is 30 years old, and let me tell you, Sophie is now lecturing in the lecture halls that I used to take her to in the University of Galway when I didn't have a childminder. She's a chartered accountant and she is second year in her PhD, and she's now a full-time lecturer in tax, finance and accounting, and a remarkable woman that I'm very proud of. But I should also mention the teenager, my son Bobby, whom I'm also very proud of, and who's going to be one of the new, young guns in the world of AI.
I can see from the smile on your face, you're brimming with pride as you say that about both of them. But thank you so much for joining us on the programme. It's been a pleasure. Joanne Sweeney of the Digital Training Institute, thank you very much.